Hello, Nikki.
Cool logo.
There. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing today?
All right. Doing all right. I have another author interview later.
Cool. Welcome. Andy is getting on. Looks like we've got a good group forming up today. Just give people another second to get on board. Welcome, Andy.
Hello.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, it's afternoon here.
Oh, yeah. I'm on Pacific time here in Arizona, so it's still 10 a.m.
You're that weird state that decides they need to be on Pacific time when everybody else is on Mountain.
Yeah. If only everybody else could follow the example of Arizona and get rid of this time change twice a year.
Yeah,
Life would be
Totally
wonderful.
agree. Totally agree.
I would vote for somebody for president. I don't care what else they're for. If they would just get rid of this time change, that would be like, I'd be a one decision voter on that alone.
That is a lie.
Well, hey, while we're waiting for other people to join up, I wanted to talk a little bit just at the beginning here about the newsletter I sent out this week on collaboration as part of my 7 systems of influence. So, collaboration is a topic that comes up a lot with authors because we think of ourselves as authors as kind of a lone wolf type of person. We're doing this on our own. We're writing the book on our own. But really, to write a book, it takes several people at least, if not a lot of people, to get that book done.
A village.
And, yeah, it takes a village, you could say. So, and we can move faster and we can move better when we have collaborators. When I wrote my book, my LinkedIn book here, I've got a bunch of co-authors down here. I think I had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I had 6 co-authors on this book. 2 of those co-authors were editors. So they didn't actually write the book, but they did a lot of editing on the book. And some of the people were doing a bunch of research, and some of the people helped out more with the writing side of things. A lot of people were just helping out with strategy. But the reason I brought in co-authors and collaborated with them was because I had the book done for like a year and it just sat there. And I knew that it needed some help, but I just couldn't seem to find the time for it. So I thought, if I bring in some other people to help me out, that's going to help me stay accountable and we can get this book across the line, and these people will help me look at it. And so I brought in those people, and those people helped out a lot as collaborators. I also sent out a message to my email list and on LinkedIn saying, hey, does anybody want to help me proofread this book, just to get more eyes on it and get any sort of feedback that there might be. And so at the front of my book, I told everybody, hey, if you help me out, I'll put your name in the book. And so at the front of my book here, this is the second page of it, I've got this whole page and it's just full of names. These are all people who helped proofread the book. So I think I had 60 or 70 people who looked at the doc that I was writing in and gave suggestions and gave feedback. And so those people were collaborators too, and that helped the book to be better and helped me get rid of a lot of errors and such. And so as we think of ourselves as authors, I like to think of myself as an entrepreneur. It's like I'm starting a business, and you can start a business by yourself, but you can go a lot further, a lot faster if you have a team working with you. So some of the collaborators we think of most frequently as authors is we'll think about editors. We might think about proofreaders, those types of people, a book cover designer. But other people who are collaborators might be peers. So we can work with other authors and groups, like right here. We're all peers here. We're working with other people. who are authors. You can work with book coaches. You can get an assistant who can help you take care of just random other tasks so that you can focus more on your book. They might not be focused on your book with you, but they're helping you organize your life so that you can focus more on your book. And then, of course, readers are collaborators too. And that's kind of what I did with bringing all those people in to help me proofread the book, is that I was taking my future readers and involving them in the book so that they could make a better book. But also, I think a lot of them had fun doing it and getting their name in the book and then feeling like, hey, I had a part in this. Maybe they can point to a page in the book and say, hey, I gave him a suggestion on this page and he changed it. And that gives them a little feeling of pride when they see the book. So when we're looking for collaborators on our book, one of the things we can start out with is to ask, who do you share your vision with? This vision of the book, who else has that same vision or wants you to succeed, wants to accomplish the same thing? You can look at people who share your genius zone or people who have similar skills, characteristics, experience, and such. Those people might be good people who can help you out with your book. You can look at people who target the same audience. So if your book is targeted towards a specific audience, who else targets that audience? Those people might be interested in helping you out somehow with the book. And it might not be that they're helping out with a book, they might be helping out with marketing of the book. So for example, if you target a certain audience, there might be a company out there that targets the same audience and sells products to them. They might be interested in sponsoring your book or somehow helping out with marketing the book. Maybe they want to buy a bunch of copies of the book to give out to their customers because your book targets the same customer base. So there are all these different ways that we can enlist collaborators and end up with a better book, a book that's marketed better and gets in the hands of our ideal audience better. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit here at the beginning. There are a bunch of books about collaboration that are helpful. One of the best ones I'd recommend is a book called Big Potential by Sean Achor. His last name's spelled A-C-H-O-R. It's like anchor without the N in it. But Big Potential by Sean Achor, it's not about author collaboration, it's about collaboration generally, but one of the best books I've read on collaboration. And as you read it, if you think about how can I apply this to what I'm doing as an author, I think you'll come up with a lot of ideas for ways to make your book better and get it out there faster. So I'll leave that at that there. All right. So welcome, Gonzalo. Good to see you. And I love that you've got a similar organization scheme for your books behind you there.
I thought of that
Thank
too.
you.
And I think the same IKEA bookcase, just the different color. So,
Thank you, Josh. It's good to see you again.
yep. And welcome, Virginia. Good morning to you. Well, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
All right. Well, we've got a good group here going. So who wants to jump in first? Who's got questions to ask? Who wants to lead the way today?
So are we allowed to ask questions about marketing your book?
Anything goes. Anything related to
Okay.
books goes in these Q&A sessions.
Can we talk about teenagers and what we do with them?
Definitely. I have a client who's writing a book specifically for teenagers right now.
Okay, I'm just being silly. So my question is this. I would like to actually produce and publish some articles like on Forbes or Entrepreneur Magazine. And I know you have background on that. And to me, I'm feeling like if I can get into a couple of publications that when I release my book or second edition, I can reference it. So what is the best way? I've never gotten anything published.
All right. Well, here's the short version. There's there are 3 basic ways to get yourself published and get exposure for your book through PR, through getting into Forbes or Inc. or Entrepreneur or other publications like that. And there's the easy but expensive fast way. There's the hard but cheap and potentially slow way. And then there's kind of the middle of the way. So the easy, fast way that's expensive is you go hire a PR firm. Costs a lot of money, but they'll do all the work for you and they'll get it done quickly. The cheap, slow way is you get yourself in as a contributor. And this is actually the one I would recommend the most for people is become a contributor to these publications. That's what I did. I got into Forbes and then I got into a bunch of other publications, changed my life. It was an amazing boost. And that's the route I would recommend. It's not easy to get in and it can take a lot of work, but it's definitely doable for anybody who's in here listening to this. It's so there's a lot of nuance with different publications. Every publication's different. Excuse me, I'm having to mute a little bit to clear my throat here this morning. But if you take the right steps, you can make it work. So I'm going to put in the chat here. Here is a link to a form where you can apply to become a Forbes contributor. Don't just go ahead and do this. If you're going to do this, start filling it out, but then ask questions. Let me know what questions you have. Show me what you're going to apply with. Send me your paragraphs, your answers, and say, hey, is this good? I would love to help you get into Forbes as a contributor. It will change your life. It's an amazing opportunity for exposure. Again, it's not easy. There's no guarantee that you can get in, but there's a chance that you could get in, and it would be huge for you as an author. It's also quite a commitment. They want you to ideally publish 5 or more articles per month, which is a bunch of work. Now, if you get into Forbes, I'll help you write articles because I have a PR firm. I help a lot of contributors write their articles, and that's a way that I can get my clients into articles because I'm helping these contributors with their writing. So if you get in there, don't worry about writing lots of articles. I'll help you out with that. And I'll help you get in because, again, I like helping people, but also it benefits my PR firm if I have connections to people who are in Forbes and other publications. So I'm more than happy to help you get into these publications, just to have that connection. But it's the best way to get PR because you control exactly what's being said. You can't promote your book blatantly in these things, but you can put it in your profile and then you can write about topics related to your book. And that's going to attract your audience. And then those people find out you have a book and they end up buying the book. They hire you for consulting. That's how it works. That's what happened to me. I started writing for Forbes in 2013. I ended up writing about 160 articles over the next 3 years for Forbes. Most of those articles didn't do anything for me, but a few of those articles generated literally millions of dollars for my businesses. We were able to track revenue directly to those articles because we'd ask everybody, how'd you find out about us? And they'd say, oh, I read this article in Forbes. And so we tracked that and we generated millions of dollars for my marketing agency because of the articles I wrote for Forbes. So there's a lot of potential there. And then the other way to get in, the last way, which can be harder, is essentially do your own PR. You can go and you can pitch these journalists, you can pitch your book, you can pitch your ideas for articles. It requires knowing how to pitch, and that can be tricky. I have tips on that. In fact, let me put that in the chat too. I've got a blog post on this, if I can remember.
Hey, if I can do a follow-up question real quick, Josh, when you say it's hard to get in as a contributor, are you talking just them to get to choose you, or once you're in, you're in and you're
just to get them to choose you?
Okay. So why is that? Why is that hard?
Mostly because people go about the application process in the right way. And that's why I'm saying, let me know what questions you have. I'm happy to help you out with this. But if you look at this application here, I'll go through it really quick. And hopefully the rest of you are interested in this as well. If you're not, you should be, because this is fantastic for you if you're an author to get in. So, by the way, is this big enough, or should let me enlarge
I
it
can see
just
it
to make sure. All right, so Forbes contributor referral form. You can use this to refer yourself, or you can refer somebody else. That's that's the reason it's worded that way. So you can just fill this out for yourself. So the first thing is Forbes wants to know what area you want to cover. Forbes has different channels or sections of their publication. When you get signed up as a contributor, you write for one of those sections and you're stuck in that section for life. So you can't switch from one section to the other. So for example, I know a guy who writes for either investing or markets. He's a financial guy. He writes about Wall Street and such. He can never switch over into taxes or wealth management. It's impossible. They don't do it. So there are all these different sections, and depending on what you're interested in and what you write about, then there are different areas that you can be a part of. And so if you set up this application and you choose one of these, then they're going to send your application to the editor of that section, and that editor is going to look at it. Now, if you get rejected, you can always come back and you can apply to a different section if you get rejected. So if you get rejected, it's not the end of the world. It's not game over. A lot of people write for the Entrepreneurs channel. It's one where there's a lot of latitude to write about a lot of different things because entrepreneurship covers so many different things. People who write for a lot of the other channels like Hollywood and entertainment, they tend to have very specific experience and expertise in that area, whereas Entrepreneurs is kind of a catch-all for a lot of people. For a lot of women, they'll write for the Forbes Women section. There's a lot of latitude there as well. We have a contributor that we work with a lot, and she writes for this section. And she's got a lot of flexibility because she can write about female executives and entrepreneurship, and she writes a lot about mompreneurs. And so she has a lot of latitude there. The other ones are very specific. And so I would recommend some of the more general categories rather than getting super specific on some of these.
Which category did you write in?
I wrote for entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Yeah. And I tried to switch over to marketing, which is, they have this CMO network, and that's basically their marketing channel. I tried to switch, and that's when they told me, no, you can't do that. That doesn't work that way. So once you choose your channel, they ask about your swim lane. And this is a really critical answer because people will say, they're really big on this. If you go outside your swim lane after you get signed on as a contributor, they kick you off the platform. They're like, no, you're supposed to write about your swim lane and your swim lane only, and you have to stick to that. So this is kind of like your niche within the channel. So if you write for entrepreneurs, you have to get more specific and say, well, I write about such and such topic within entrepreneurship, and that's what you end up writing about, and they want you to really stick to that. And so when I'm consulting with people and helping people to get into these publications, we talk a lot about swim lane and how to craft this. The way that I like to think about it is, imagine that Forbes magazine is a collector of exotic animals, and they're trying to complete their collection. Yeah. And they're looking at this saying, hey, I've got a hole over here. I've got this animal I want, and nobody fills that. And if you come in and you say, that's what I do, they'll say, oh, great, I want to add you to my collection because I don't have one of you in my collection. But if you go and you say, oh, my swim lane is marketing and entrepreneurs, they'll say, okay, I get 100 of those every month applying for this. I don't need that exotic animal. That's not exotic enough. It's not special. I'm covered there. And so you have to really get pretty specific so that they read your swim lane and they say, ooh, I don't have that. That sounds really interesting. I'd love to have somebody writing about that. When I got in, they told me, I was moving to Hong Kong at the time, and they said, we're only letting you in because you're moving to Hong Kong, and we don't have somebody in Hong Kong writing about entrepreneurship. They said, if you were staying in the US, we wouldn't bring you on because we've got lots of people in the US writing about entrepreneurship, but we have nobody in Hong Kong. So that's the only reason I got in. So then there's other general stuff that you fill out, your audience, and you have to provide some specific story ideas. I just went through this with somebody yesterday and helped them strategize their answers to this. When you get down to post frequency, it's better if you say more than 5 times a month because they want lots of articles from you. And again, I'll help you write the articles. And also, if you write 5 times or more per month, you actually get paid. You don't get paid a lot. It's like enough to go on maybe a date or two a month or something. It's not going to make you rich, but you might get a
You
couple
can
$100
say you're
a
paid
month.
by Forbes to write.
Yeah, you can say you're paid by Forbes.
That's
Uh,
all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
you
give
have
me
to-
25 cents a month, but hey, man, I get paid by them.
Yeah. You have to provide some writing samples. You have to say that you're willing to do a sample post. You just check yes on that. That's easy. And some more basic info here. Anyway, okay, here's a key one. If you've ever been on a Forbes council, like they have Forbes Coaches Council, but if you've ever been on a Forbes council, which is something you pay for, you pay, I think, $1,200 a month or a year, and you get to be on a council and you can publish articles on Forbes. It's like a paid program. Well, it is a paid program, but if you've ever been on this, you can never be a contributor. Doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago, doesn't matter if you signed up and published one article 10 years ago, and that's all you ever did. If you've ever been on a Forbes council, you can never be a contributor, unfortunately.
What if you dated the president of the company? Did they let you in then?
I think that's okay. I think that's not an official game over thing for you. Anyway, so you've got a link to this. If anybody wants to do this, if you want help with it, let me know. I also have a friend who does a mastermind where he helps you get into Forbes and other publications and helps you to get paid. And if you're interested in that, let me know. It's $900 a month, so that's not cheap either, but it works. I'm in that group actually, and there are a lot of people getting into Forbes, Business Insider, Inc., a lot of major publications, and then they're turning that into revenue so that the group pays for itself. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I can give you more information to join that group. So that is the your little primer on PR and authorship there. Any other questions about that, Andy?
No, that was great. That was a lot of good information. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Gonzalo, you got a question?
Well, it's more of letting the rest know that I've been following Josh since 2013, 2012. I took a couple of his courses as well. And just to give you an example, by the time I started in his course, I had only 400 followers on LinkedIn. And today, following what he taught me, I have more than 17,000 one. So
wow.
I've been able to create a following, and it took me a while to start writing on LinkedIn. And well, they didn't have enough features back then, but it's helped me grow professionally. So
that's great. I think the first time we met was at the place in Sandy, wasn't it, in Utah?
Yes, the Miller campus of Salt Lake
the
Community
Miller
College.
campus.
That's right.
Yep. I was going to say it's like something CC, SLSC, SLCC. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Wow. I remember that. That was good times. It's amazing. It's been 10 years.
Yeah. Amazing.
Great. All right. What other questions does everybody have about book writing, book publishing, book marketing, anything?
Can I just sort of give you a status update of where I am now?
Yes, please.
Something kind of exciting happened. Ever since I started your course at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, and now again that I'm looking at things through fresh eyes with a different perspective, I just had this big question about what the heck I want to write about, and I just have not been able to figure what that is. And you know, I don't know. I just, if you've ever had one of those moments where you just have an epiphany and it's like the most obvious answer ever, and I figured out what I want to do and I'm excited about it. I had told you before about a book that I use to help teach people Agile. It's a really short book. It's got pictures, and it's probably the only book I've ever bought like 10 different times. And after I realized, I thought about it some more. I was like, that book has been so helpful to me that I think that is the book I want to write. Obviously not exactly the same, but something very brief, very easy to digest, somebody can flip through it and see what's going on. You can use it to teach somebody at an executive level can, you know, who probably wouldn't read a whole book from me, would flip through it and see enough to know that I kind of know what I'm doing. And it can be used as a tool that I give out when I'm teaching people as well. And it's going to be less writing, and it's going to be more trying to connect with people who can provide me with good cover art, some good illustrations within the book. But yeah, I think I want to write sort of the next iteration of that book. That book is pre-pandemic, doesn't speak to anything virtual. But I think I really want to do something simple like that. And then the next day I was pulling something out of this sort of briefcase bag I bring in when I have to go into the office. And I have a copy of that book just sitting in my purse, just in case I need it. So I was like, I think that's that part. I think I have decided I want to use that as my hero book.
Cool. That's great. I'm glad you had that realization. And it brings up an interesting point that as technology changes or the world changes, that presents a lot of opportunities for new books, right? I mean, I wrote my LinkedIn book 2 years ago, basically. Well, look at what's changed in the last 2 years. I mean, AI now, I mean, you go on LinkedIn, you start a post, it says, hey, use AI to help you write your post. There are all these things that have come out because of AI. It's changed the game everywhere. And so there are a lot of books out there that are going to need to be rewritten because of AI, but the authors who wrote those books aren't necessarily going to rewrite their books, but that gives an opportunity for all of us to go out and say, what's been talked about a lot or what's really popular out there that has totally changed because of AI, and I could be the person to write the first book post AI about that topic.
Yeah, it's been such a useful tool, and it genuinely is a beloved book to me. It has just been so great in so many different situations. And I would like to have a book that people that use it feel the same way.
Yeah. I sent the link to my COO. She hasn't responded yet, but I'm going to force her to read it, and we'll see what she thinks.
Oh, the book?
Yeah,
The
the one.
Scrum book?
Yeah, the breathtakingly brief one.
Yep. It'll take her not very long. I have it in front of me. It's 53 pages. A couple of them are pictures. Yep.
Cool. I'm sure she'll love it because she loves everything Scrum and Agile.
Maybe
Well,
she'll
cool.
want to collaborate with me.
There's an idea. There you go. And actually, yeah, I mean, it's going back to that collaboration. One thing I didn't mention is interviewing people for books and finding people who can provide quotes and case studies. That's another way to collaborate with people, and building that list at the beginning of your book to say, hey, who are all the people I want to interview and get their quotes from for my book? That's another great way to collaborate.
So I have a question on that. So those of you that are on here, so you may need to know, I already have my book written, and Josh, I did a lot of that. In fact, I feel that my book is good because I quote so many people that are much smarter than me, because I'm so read within the entrepreneurial, small business, marketing, business development space. Should I start reaching out to those people that I'm actually quoting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the earlier you do it, the more you do it, the better, because those people, I mean, if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I want to quote you in a book, well, that's flattering to me and that's exciting. And I want to help them out with that any way that I can. And the more time there is, the more somebody can help you out and collaborate, because they just have more time to think and more time to give you ideas. And maybe they can refer you to other people as well that you can collaborate with. So if you give somebody a week, there's not a lot that they can do. But if you give them a few months, then they might just have ideas that they come back to you with that are helpful.
Do you need their permission to quote them though?
You don't need somebody's permission just to quote, like a short quote.
Yeah.
Here, I'll say this. If it's out there publicly, you don't need permission if it's short. If it's an interview, like you got their quote firsthand, then yes, it's best to get a release form. And I've got a release form if anybody ever needs one. It's just a one-pager simple document. But you do want to get a release form just to be on the safe side. That said, I wouldn't care if somebody gets a release form for me or not, as long as they quote me accurately.
Right.
But there are some people who do care, and it's just safer to get those.
It's it's considered good business practice, and that you're building a relationship with the person. So to go the extra mile, what do they say? The extra mile is never crowded. It's a better, I think it's always a good thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, if I were a lawyer, I'd say, yes, you absolutely must do it to protect yourself from being liable. Gonzalo.
So one of the things in which you inspire me is I started my own podcast 2 years ago, and by then I knew what I wanted to talk about. One of the things that I learned from you was finding my own genius zone, and that is helping me with by interviewing other people in the fields I'm interested in. It's helping me build on material. Is that has that worked for you? And I'm going to be very shallow here in the monetary way, or pretty much just establishing yourself as a thought leader, which you are.
Sorry, so I want to make sure I understand the question. So what exactly has worked out in a monetary way? Like, which part of Genius Zone do you mean exactly?
I guess it's writing a book with a lot of collaboration from the people you're interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And once that book has been published, has that pretty much been an aid to whatever business model you have, or has it been
so just writing a book generally, what financial return have I seen from that? Yeah, it's been huge. I can't say it's been as huge as writing for Forbes was. I mean, I haven't made millions off of book writing yet, but I think I'll get specific here. So my first book was Chief Marketing Officers at Work. I interviewed 30 CMOs from different companies, PayPal, Spotify, Target, Home Depot, and I collated, or I put all their interviews in this one book and released that. And so that was a book designed for marketers, and I was running a marketing agency. And so what I did with that book is whenever I'd go in and pitch a client, I'd take a copy or multiple copies of my book and I'd give it to the people that I was pitching. And I would just say, hey, I wrote this book. Here's a gift for you. And my team would do this too. They'd say, hey, our CEO wrote this book. He interviewed all these CMOs. We just wanted to give it to you as a gift. I know for a fact that that helped me close deals. Okay. There were situations I was in where I was brought in, or there was one in China specifically where I was brought in as a partner with another guy. And he said, hey, we're going to go pitch this person. He said, it's going to take 5 or 6 meetings to get a deal. That's just the way business works over here. You have to really develop that relationship. And we walked in and I gave him the book as a gift and we chatted. And at the end, he said, all right, send me a contract. I'm ready to go. And we walked out and the partner turned to me and he's like, what just happened? That never happens. How did you just close that deal? And I said, it's the book. Honestly, like the guy, you saw him when I gave him the book, the way that he looked at me as an authority figure and the credibility I had once I handed him the book. He just checked that off in his mind. He didn't need to meet me 5 more times to build up trust because he just saw the book and he felt comfortable. And the guy was just like, that was amazing. That was great. And I was like, it's the book. It's not me. It's not anything I said during the pitch. It was the book. And so I had experiences like that where I could see firsthand, like, man, just having this book. I mean, the guy didn't read the book. I just handed them the book, but just being able to hand it to him made all the difference. Another way, a tangible difference is when I published that first book, I was just starting to get paid to speak at events and conferences. And so I was really at the bottom. I was an entry-level paid speaker, but I was at least not doing it for free anymore. But once I read the book, all of a sudden I could ask for a lot more, like double, triple, quadruple what I was asking for before. And people would give it to me because I had a book. And all of a sudden I was this I was a different type of expert in the eyes of the event organizers. And I got a call one day from a speakers bureau, and he was just collecting information on me to pitch to his clients. And I said, how much of a difference does it make if somebody has a book? And he said, if you don't have a book, you can get paid $2,000 or $3,000 to go speak at an event. If you have a book, you can get paid $10,000 to $15,000 to speak at an event. He said, that's the difference a book makes when it comes to getting paid as a speaker. Now, that doesn't mean if you just write any old book, you're going to get paid $15,000 to go speak. A lot of other things have to line up too. But all other things being equal, he was saying that's what he sees in his industry, is that having a book takes you from $2,000 or $3,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 as a paid speaker. So, and I've seen that firsthand as well. So those are just some examples of how a book has made a difference financially for me. And there are lots of other ways too, but those are two of the bigger ones.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. All right. What else? What are people getting stuck on? What do people need help with? Nikki, you want to tell us where you're at with your book?
Sure. So my debut will be self-published on November 4th. And I also have a novella that's set in the same universe that's being published on October 1st. And where I am at the moment, getting reviews, doing interviews, and working on the second book. And yesterday I received my first 3-star review, and I've had only 5-star reviews. And you know this is coming, that everybody is not going to love what you write, and you try and steel yourself for it as best you can. And it was a good review. And the things that she was dinging me for were all preferences. So, and she said at the beginning that this is not the type of book she normally reads. So I didn't, have an emotional breakdown over it, but I was trying to look at it positively with, okay, what can you learn from this? Excuse me. And what she was focusing on was such an outlier to what other people who had reviewed and given me feedback loved, the things that she did not care for. So my critique partner, I told her about it, and she was like, don't address your reviews. I didn't want to defend myself or anything like that. She's like, nope. I thanked her sincerely for taking the time, because it's still a relationship. And then another person from her group I just saw before I hopped on this call also did a 3-star, but they didn't do a review, so just a rating. And again, I know it's a race to 10, and we're going for quantity and quality, but I know that I've written a good book, so my ego can take that hit. And now I've got my second interview this afternoon, actually right after this, and trying to take what I learned from the first, where I was so incredibly nervous. Everybody said that they couldn't tell that I was nervous, but I could tell I was nervous. And trying to take what I learned from that first time and apply it to this one. They did send me the questions yesterday, and I didn't want to sound too rehearsed. So I've got some ideas, some talking points, and it's a host that I know well, that I've interacted with a lot. With the first one, that was my second time talking to her. So I feel good about it. And I guess it's just sort of asking, okay, how do I not try or how do I talk myself out of quitting when you get a not great review? But that was mostly yesterday when I first got it, and feeling a lot more confident about it now. None of her criticism was this chick needs a new job. This was trash. It was poorly. Nothing substantive that way. It was totally all about preferences.
Well, it's great that you picked up on that and noticed that. I love reading the 1-star reviews on Amazon for books or products or whatever. I always go straight to the 1 stars because I'm like, I want to see what people are saying that's really negative. And sometimes you see a 1-star review and it's like the box was all torn up when I received the product. And you're like, okay, that's a review of the shipping and the handling, not the actual product.
Right.
But when you see that, I mean, I've seen that where they're like multiple one-star reviews and they're all about product shipping and labeling or something, or it came without the batteries or something, even though it says it
Oh,
comes
that sounds
without
so
batteries.
unfair.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
and
And
the thing
go
though
ahead.
is when you go and see a bunch of those negative reviews and then you realize these aren't about the product, it's actually kind of good for the product that way, because
Mhm.
then you're like, okay, they're getting real reviews from people and the bad reviews are not really bad reviews. And then you tend to discount any of the other bad reviews. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a 3-star like that, because somebody might read it and then say, oh, she's just talking about her preferences. And so in their mind, they actually discount that and say, oh, this isn't really a bad review. But it does show that the reviews you're getting are legit reviews and they're not just your friends or something.
And I don't trust any, I'm someone who lives and dies by reviews on Amazon with not just books, but everything. I don't
Mhm.
trust anything that has a 100%
Right.
5-star rating, because that sounds suspicious. Like it sounds like people who love you want you to do well. And I get that. And this is why I don't have anybody I know reviewing
Yeah.
for me. And it didn't take me long to get to that point where I was looking at the positive and looking at it overall. But the first shock of it was like, expletive. So I was sort of like, what? You're not a doctor until you've killed a few patients. You're not really an author until you've gotten tanked in a review, maybe. And I didn't even get tanked. So
Yeah.
I guess it's a lesson and keep going. Like you said, take the good from it and realize that it's just a chance for more legitimacy.
Yeah. And it is a great chance for feedback. I've gotten comments on my books where they, like on my LinkedIn book, some people said they didn't like the format. They didn't like the way that I divided chapters. And well, I did that on purpose and I wouldn't change it, but it was interesting to get that feedback and say, well, maybe if I write another book like this someday, I might consider doing it the way that they want it, because maybe that is a better format. Maybe I'll experiment with that. And so I get ideas from the reviews, but yeah, I try not to take them too seriously, because I've put so much work into this product. So of course I care so much about it. And these people who are typing in the review, of course, they don't care nearly as much about their review as I care about the book. So I try to take it for what it's worth, but I try to find helpful stuff in there. And sometimes I do.
Yeah,
Great.
I got to say, as far as bad reviews, because I've gotten a couple of them as well. In fact, when COVID came out, I did this huge, very well produced video that I put on LinkedIn, as many places I could put it on, and send out links. And I literally had a guy reply to me and said, look, man, I don't know exactly what you're planning on doing, but if you ever plan to do public speaking, do not do it, because you're horrible. I mean, he really came at me. So, you know, and I didn't really feel all that bad, but the one thing I will tell you, I've got a kind of a healthy self esteem, you know, kind of one of those self-esteems that you're like, yeah, you know, I'm really humble and I know it. Bad reviews help you when you're of that nature. It's good to get that criticism, because we're never as good as we think we are. I mean, we want to think we're great, right? But the bad reviews actually kind of keep us grounded. And I think it's a good thing, because if there's nothing for us to really work on and get better at it, then, you know, what's the point of life anyway? I need to be terrible at something in order to get better at it.
I love it when people give me criticism, because I'm like, all right, you're telling me what I can do better. This is great. This is so helpful. I love it. Even when it's mean-spirited, sometimes I love it, because as long as it's something I can use and leverage. I mean, some people are mean just to be mean, and they're not saying anything that's helpful. And I try to ignore those people. But when people are just like, hey, you stink at this for these reasons, 1, 2, 3, I look at that and I'm like, well, do they have a point? Can I do better at that? And if I can do better, great, I'll do that, because I want to be better. I think there's a quote from Aristotle or Plato about the people who criticize us should be the people we keep closest to us and should be our best friends, because they're the ones who are helping us to improve. Well, great. Well, Virginia, how are things coming along with your work?
Well, I finally have, well, a lot of things together, and I plan in the second half of this class to like put a lot of things together. I was noticing as I was going through your Genius Zone material and the different newsletters, how my opinion of all of it has changed since the first time I saw it. And I initially I saw it as kind of I guess this it's sort of a phony front kind of thing. I mean, if we'll take the Hong Kong thing. Just because you've been to Hong Kong, that makes you a genius in it. When I know a lot of people that have degrees and they've lived there, and that it was a different standard of genius in my generation. I'm a different generation. So there were I'm noticing now that there were 2 or 3 of those things, and I kind of stopped reading. And now I can see the point that and as you wind up being a writer for beginners, I think it was it
Yes, for a running magazine.
yeah, trail running or something like that.
Yep.
And so I'm seeing a lot of the things as I'm rereading things, I'm seeing it. And so now I'm finally going to put a lot of that stuff together again and see if I can come up with what I'm supposed to come up with, because I feel like I'm really being called to write something. And
That's great.
I'm open. I mean, and I have books with all these possibilities, but now I'm hoping that it's going to hit, because I finally, what did I hear the other day from I know, a woman the other night, last name is Twist, I forget the first name, but she's quite a powerhouse. And she talked about when you have all these awards and things, that it's really arrogant to think that you're not good. Who are you to think? This just totally did it for me, because I'm taking mine out of boxes and now like putting them up in my apartment, because I used to think, oh, that's bragging or something. I'm not going to like do this, but I have that God made you and God gave you those things, and you have a responsibility to operate from that place. And that was Lynn Twist, and she's a powerhouse in the world, and that really reinforced a lot of work and stuff that I'm doing right now. So now this afternoon, as I put things together, I'm doing it from that place. And she talked too about, and you do this as well, starting from the end. Start from like, where do you want to be 2 or 3 years from now? And don't worry about the how. Just take all these little steps. And that's really what I've been doing. What do they say? 80% of life is showing up,
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to perform once you get there, I guess, is the other 20. But that's what I'm after. I'm after that epiphany that, this is the big thing. And that's where I am. So I finally, but I finally understood quite early on, as I read those first newsletters and things in your book, I kind of tuned you out as it's just a different generation that wasn't me. And I can remember all the business deals that I did, and especially with my husband. He had who was a captain of industry, and he would say, your contacts better be very firm. And that was in a completely different world than now. I hear some of these kids running around now, flipping things superficially. And to me, that's a red flag. That I like people that are genuine, and it's a different generation. So at any rate, I don't know if that makes any sense, but to me, it made a lot of sense, because before, and maybe I'm willing to, my tolerance has changed for a lot of things. And I realized that in order to make a difference in this world, it has to, And then it also occurred to me, we were talking about Raffles Hotel the other day coming to Boston. And a light bulb went off with that shows that the Asian population is now significant, if that's coming here at that. So I have all these like little light bulbs coming off. And now
Raffles in Singapore?
I'm sorry?
Raffles in
Yeah,
Singapore?
Raffles from Singapore is coming to Boston.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, which I thought, you know, I've been to, and I'll never forget, they wanted me to use my company name, which was very small at the time. And I said, I'm here on vacation. I'm not going to do that. And they said, we've given you the Joseph Conrad suite and we're fully booked. That's the best suite in the hotel. So I gave them my name, my company name, but, all that, even that kind of stuff in the shift in the world, I figure that, that I have a much bigger role to play than I think is what I'm trying to say, because I understand a lot of those nuances and that they're going to be like the new Ritz in town, the way the old Ritz, used to be. And I don't know, I'm noticing a lot of things that I didn't used to notice. And I think that's not an accident.
There's so much to be said for self-confidence and building ourselves up. And we get so concerned about looking proud or being boastful. And I think a lot of us talk ourselves out of reaching our full potential because we don't want to be seen that way. We don't want to be seen as putting ourselves above others. But if we turn it around and say it's not about putting ourselves above others, it's actually about putting ourselves under others and supporting others and serving others. And we have to put ourselves out there in order to serve people, then we can reverse that psychology a little bit. And I think that helps us to become more comfortable in putting ourselves on the line and putting our story out there, because nobody is served by us being quiet and withholding what we have inside of our heads. The only way that we'll ever know if it's useful, if it's helpful, is if we get it out there and try. That's why I love that Woody Allen quote about 90% of success being just showing up or whatever. Is there's so much to be said for just putting something out there and seeing what happens. I'm trying to do this on a project right now. I wrote my memoir about adopting my daughter from China, and I finished the rough draft a year ago, and then it's just been sitting there and I haven't been doing anything with it. And finally the other day I thought, I just met this literary agent. I'm going to send this over to her and I'm going to just see what she thinks. And she might get back to me and say, no, this has no potential. Go ahead and self-publish it, but nobody's going to be interested in this. You'll sell 10 copies. That's fine if that's the feedback I get. But maybe the feedback is, yeah, I'm going to go pitch this to a traditional publisher and maybe somebody cares about it. And maybe it sells 10,000 copies. And maybe there are a lot of people who will be impacted by it. I'll never know unless I put it out there, unless I show up by sending that manuscript out and seeing what happens. So
It's like Barbara Bush, when George Bush was going out to make a speech, and she said to him, now remember, George, nobody likes braggadocio. And he said, Mother, I'm running for president of the United States. They expect braggadocio, which I think is interesting. So at any rate,
say what you want about Trump. He knows how to talk about himself, and he definitely does not lack self-confidence.
Well, and it's not, I say a lot of actually good things about Trump, but we won't get into that here. One of the other things that I absolutely admire, and it goes through his confidence, is that he's even still walking around through all of these. But at any rate, he knows who he is, and I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's all about authenticity. I think it's that when you can. This is exactly what I'm trying to. The lesson I'm trying to get is, and I start laughing with all these things that I'm putting up on the world now, and I'll say, she's right. You have a lot of nerve not believing that. This Lynn Twist, who works on the Hunger Project and work in the Amazon and all kinds of, big world. She works with billionaires all the time. And she's quite a remarkable powerhouse. And when she said that, who are you to criticize God's work? And if he gave you all that stuff, he expects you to use it. I mean, that really hit me right between the eyes,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Trump is like the most volatile example we can bring up here, but he, again, say what you will about him. He's authentic. You never have to wonder what he thinks because he says it immediately. There's zero filter. He just says everything. You might not like what he says, but he says it, and that confidence and authenticity is a large part of why I think a certain section of the country loves him, is because they're like, hey, at least he's saying what he thinks. At least I can trust that he's saying what he thinks. And I don't have to wonder about whether he's really lying to me. I might, and other people say, well, I hate what he says. So, but you rarely hear it said that people think he's lying. It's usually just that they say, I hate what he says. But there's so much to be said for that authenticity and that honesty. When people can sense that in your writing, then it draws people to you, because again, they might say, I don't exactly like what this person's saying, but I 100% believe that this is what they mean, or this is what happened, even if I don't like the tone that they're taking. We hate it when people hide stuff from us, or when we have to wonder if they're telling us the whole story. Anyway, it's always risky talking about Trump, but
Well, that's why Baskin Robbins or all the stores had all those flavors. Everybody's different, you know.
yep, yep.
And
Well, we're sure getting a lot of different flavors these days as the elections heat up and such.
well, and one of my comments that sometimes I'll have to say someplace, and isn't it wonderful we're in the United States of America, where we can express all these different opinions. I mean, that's the real gift, you know.
It's, yeah, and where we don't have to fight a war every 4 years to change leadership, which is what a lot of other countries do. We just yell at each other, and maybe a couple people get in fights or something, but there are other countries where every time they switch leaders, 10,000 people die. We've got a better system.
So at any rate, that's what I've been up to.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we're coming up on the time to go into our accountability working together hour. Anybody have any last comments, questions, anything you want to talk about? I think we're all good then. We good to go into accountability time?
Okay,
All right. I'm going to work on my book projects, and you guys can work on yours. And again, if you have questions while we're doing this, just take yourself off mute and talk. I'll be right here, and we can talk about anything that might come up for you during the next hour as we work on stuff together. And if you need to drop and go away, that's totally fine too.